We should note here, NBC News has not yet verified the authenticity of these messages. CNN's reporting suggests the username traces back to other similar ones across a number of social media platforms, and certain posts contain details that matched up with Robinson's personal life. And for his part, Robinson and his team, they are denying any of these posts came from him and that he never created or used such an account. Here's Robinson's response.
Let me reassure you, the things that you will see in that story, those are not the words of Mark Robinson. You know my words, you know my character, and you know that I have been completely transparent in this race and before. Clarence Thomas famously once said he was the victim of a high-tech lynching. Well, it looks like Mark Robinson is too, by a man who refuses to stand on stage and debate me about the real issues that face you. Instead, they want to focus on salacious tabloid lies. We're not going to let them do that. We are staying in this race. We are in it to win it.
We do know his words, and we will get to that in just a second. But a spokesperson for North Carolina's Board of Elections confirmed to NBC News this afternoon the deadline for Robinson to submit a written request to withdraw from this race has now passed. Lieutenant Governor submitted no such paperwork, so this race, as it stands, is on. The North Carolina Republican Party, they are standing by Robinson. The Trump campaign, they are too, at least to some degree, suggesting North Carolina is a vital part of the campaign without ever mentioning Robinson's name. But as we mentioned, Democrats are trying to make that connection in voters' minds. Fewer than 24 hours after the story broke, the DNC announcing plans to launch an ad blitz nearly a dozen billboards across North Carolina. And the Harris-Walz campaign released a brand new video of their own just this afternoon. Take a look.
And he's been an unbelievable Lieutenant Governor, Mark Robinson.
For me, there's no compromise on abortion.
I think you're better than Martin Luther King.
We could pass a bill say you can't have an abortion in North Carolina for any reason.
The abortion in this country, it's about killing a child because you aren't responsible enough to keep your skirt down.
I've been with him a lot. I've gotten to know him, and he's outstanding.
Donald Trump and Mark Robinson. They're both wrong for North Carolina.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Worth underscoring. That ad we all just watched highlighted comments made by Robinson in public. Remember, Robinson's name will be right there with Donald Trump's on the ballot in North Carolina this election day. And given just how essential that state is for both campaigns, any change to the status quo could tip the scales in that state and, by extension, the race for president. And that is where we start this hour with NBC News correspondent Antonia Hilton for us in Raleigh, North Carolina. Antonia, the Robinson campaign, the Trump campaign, they seem to think they can just hold on tight, let this all pass. Can they?
Well, that's the central question right now. And as you mentioned a moment ago, the Robinson campaign, because they missed that 11:59 deadline, in a way, you know, that's their statement. They're in this. There is no change to be made at this point. We saw the North Carolina GOP release a statement saying that they're essentially standing by their man. The Trump campaign, though, is a whole different ballgame because they're trying to walk this tightrope right now. We just got new NBC News reporting. Our colleague Dasha Burns has been talking to people all afternoon. And what they've found is that there are allies, both here locally in the North Carolina delegation and in the Trump campaign, who are pushing that campaign to actually rescind the endorsement and rethink that relationship here. However, at least at this point, Trump has not wanted to do so. He certainly hasn't taken that step yet, but he is going to be here campaigning tomorrow. And what we do know is Robinson is not going to be on that stage. So there's this sort of effort to not really comment on the contents of what has been said, but so still maintain some of that relationship, but try to avoid allowing Robinson and this scandal to potentially drag down the entire Republican ticket. That is certainly what Democrats are hoping is about to happen, and it is what Republicans are going to try to avoid, Alicia.
That is a delicate two-step for even the most seasoned dancer, so we will see just how that goes. You know, Antonia, it strikes me that there was a press conference earlier this afternoon. North Carolina's current governor, Roy Cooper, he's a Democrat. He made the case that a lot of Robinson's most radical comments, they were made right out in public. Just fill in some of that background for us.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk to some of the voters and political operatives here, I mean, I was here in 2022 covering the midterms. People talked about Mark Robinson back then, too. There is a long history of comments here. I mean, one of the ones that I've heard from voters that's come up time and time again is a time in which he referenced the Holocaust and seemed to suggest that it was hogwash, that he was casting doubt on some facts, some realities of the violence of how Jewish people were treated by Nazis. And, for those voters who I spoke to today, that therefore makes it not so hard for them to leap to the conclusion that perhaps he would have commented something similar on online forums, as CNN has reported. Then I've spoken to some Republican voters, though, who say that these are all allegations, that they don't really know what is true, what is not true, and so they plan still to vote for him. What's interesting about this state, though, it has one of the highest numbers of independent voters and moderates, people who do split ticket voting or who change their party cycle after cycle. And so Robinson really has the potential to turn those people off. They are the kind of voters who are consistently trying to get the rhetoric turned down in this country. They don't like comments like that. They certainly aren't comfortable with some of the anti-Semitic and Islamophobic things that he's both said on the record or online in the past, or possibly in these social media posts found by CNN. And so those are the voters that may be turned off here, and that the Harris campaign is going to aggressively go after here as they try to chart their path to victory in a state that, over the last 11 cycles, I think, has only gone for a Democrat once.
Antonia Hilton, live for us in Raleigh, North Carolina. Antonia, thank you for your reporting. Let's bring into our conversation former RNC spokesman and host of the Bulwark podcast, Tim Miller, plus distinguished political scholar and professor at Princeton University, Eddie Glaude, and here at the table, Democratic strategist and professor at Columbia University, Basil Smythe. Tim, when this is all over, when this is all over, we're going to do a supercut of me saying to you, well, have we found the bottom? Is this the new low? Is this it? And you just say, I don't know where the bottom is anymore, that they saw everything he said in public. They didn't walk away from him. There's now this reporting, and he's still their guy.
Yeah, it's hard to get lower than sticking with your man when he says he's pro-slavery on a porn message board. But that is where we are. And this, I think, we can talk about this race and Mark Robinson specifically in a second. But I do think that this is just such a damning example of just the rot of the Republican Party and what the Republican voters are looking for. I mean, if you set up a system where you're saying, I want you to apply for a job. I want you to apply to be the Republican nominee for governor or Senate or president. And what we're looking for on your resume is how willing are you to suck up to a con man and a liar and Donald Trump? How shameful will you be in sucking up to this person? And the second thing we're looking for is how mean and cruel will you be to liberals and marginalized people? And that's all we're looking for. We're just looking for people that will suck up to a con man and will be mean to liberals. Well, the types of people that are going to submit their resume are Mark Robinson and Herschel Walker and Carrie Lake and Doug Mastriano. You're going to get sociopaths that apply. If you're no longer looking for people that, ran a business or served in the military or served their community, the types of things we used to look for in public service that the Democrats still look for in their public servants. If you're not looking for those attributes, if you're looking for who can suck up to Trump and who can be mean to Democrats, you're going to get people like Mark Robinson, who apparently spent most of his adult life either on a message board on a porn site, posting racist and gross stuff, or inside a porn store, eating a pizza in the back room, where apparently he was 5 nights a week at times. And it's hard to know how this guy found time to go to the bank or do anything. Maybe he didn't, because he also went bankrupt several times. So and this is the type of person you wouldn't hire to run a fast food restaurant. The idea that he would be governor of one of the biggest states in the country is insane. The idea that he'd have voters that want him to be governor is just preposterous. But we got here because we're at the 9-year mark of this Trump era where what the voters have incentivized are all of these wrong attributes.
Well, right, and where there has been no punishment, Eddie, for just absolute moral rot. In Politico, this is new from today, an email address belonging to North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson was registered on Ashley Madison, a website designed for married people seeking affairs. An advisor to Robinson, granted anonymity to speak freely, confirmed to Politico that the email address in question belongs to Robinson. A spokesperson for Robinson said he had not made an account on Ashley Madison. There are two things I want you to speak to, Eddie. One, this idea of centering a political profile on conservative family values and feeling that you can weigh in on other Americans' individual liberties and the way that they build their families and conduct their lives. And also the way that part of the appeal of a candidate like this for Donald Trump is trying to build a permission structure, say, well, I can't possibly be racist if I embrace Black candidates like Mark Robinson. Talk to me about the complexity of both issues.
Well, first of all, we have to understand, first, it's great to see you, Alicia, and we have to understand the complexity of these sorts of appeals, right? There's a sense in which ideas of trying to police the morality of individual behavior, to police the nature of what a family should look like, always runs up against the actual practices themselves, the actual lives being lived. And we have too many examples of how the tension between the life lived and the so-called political trafficking in policing the moral values of people collide. They're just example upon example of how that hypocrisy evidences itself. But in terms of the second question, the second point, if I understand it correctly, it's really something that we have to interrogate. I'm not trying to suggest that there aren't Black conservatives. I'm not trying to suggest that there aren't Black reasonable conservatives. My dear friend, your co-host, Michael Steele, is an example. But there's a sense in which these folk who are crazy in some ways. Mark Robinson. I'm thinking about before Donald Trump and Mark Robinson, there was E.W. Jackson in Virginia, who was running for lieutenant. He was just as crazy, just as to the, and his issue was around same-sex marriage and the like, right? And you think about Alan West, you think about Jesse Lee Peterson, and part of it has to do with trafficking in this caricatured version of what a Black person ought to believe, and then this caricatured version of a Black conservative, and how that's supposed to appeal to this, shall we say, mindless public, Black public who just simply follows race and not paying attention to positions. It actually reveals how deeply problematic the politics actually are.
Basil.
You know, let me talk a little bit electorally for a second. He was underperforming Trump. This is a great opportunity for Democrats to be able to to be able to get Josh Stein elected governor in the state. The fact that the Harris campaign has the kind of money that it has, the beauty of it is that it can punch back in situations like this all over the country, go deeper into some of these swing states than even the Biden campaign could have done earlier. So the benefit for the Harris campaign is that she can be competitive in areas and at times that she never was before. And that is the force of all of the Black people that Mark Robinson says should perhaps return to slavery, right? When you talk about Black jobs, the Black job is voting and getting Kamala Harris elected president of the United States. And and to pivot off of Eddie's point, one of the things that's really striking to me is how often the GOP weaponizes Black people against Black people, right? Using the kind of language that he's used. Robinson stood up on a church pulpit and said that some people should be killed.
Deserve killing.
Deserve killing, right? Why? How does the GOP find these people? And I have a qualm, obviously. I have issues with the people that they chose to get up and make these comments. But just think about where the GOP is that goes out and finds these people, and then what happens to them after the fact? Where do they go? Where's Herschel Walker today? They use them, they spit them out, but they're there for a purpose. This is not republicanism, this is not conservatism. This is weaponizing Black folk against their own community because, at his point, and Tim